This is ridiculous. Only a wimp would be hiding under a bed. I'm not afraid anymore! Do you hear me? I'm not afraid anymore!
What is up, Space Pirates? This is your Admiral, the engagingly eccentric Dr. Disaster, and traditionally, the cultural right wing has been terrible at fighting over pop culture. They have not understood its importance, but now that so many of us have mobilized and pushed back, making a dent in progressive shit-lib hegemony, the moral busybodies are none too thrilled.
How dare you!
Go make me a sandwich.
These people on the progressive side of things understand how important a cultural narrative is. They understand that it's often not so much what happens in the world, but the story told about what happens. That is why, for years, they spent so much time getting people banned on social media platforms for not agreeing with them. They wanted control over the story. That is why they worked so hard this past summer, as an example, trying to call anyone who liked the American Eagle Sydney Sweeney ad a Nazi, even though it was a wild success. They do this because they can't have anything showing that they do not have total cultural power, that it's okay in any way to oppose them, and it is why they are now fighting their asses off to try to spin the release of Ghost of Yotei as a wild success.
Do you trust me? What? Do you trust me?
No. As many of us have been saying ever since this game was first announced a year or so ago, Ghost of Yotei is just another brick in the wall for the progressive project. A girl boss, angry lesbian replacement of a beloved male character, even though Jin Sakai from Ghost of Tsushima definitely deserved a sequel. But the cultural right wing are not buying this game for a variety of reasons, and there are signs that this boycott has worked, which basically has the shitlibs going. The other day, they started running with this story here to try to convince everyone that Ghost of Yotei is wildly popular, but that shit got shut down pretty quick when we pointed out that the supposed insider, who was the progenitor of this rumor, is this account here on X, which has less than 10,000 followers and no history of breaking big stories in gaming at all. We've seen all kinds of narratives come from these people as they try desperately to cling to their power. They've had to watch in horror as other games which pushed leftist crap like Dragon Age the Veilguard, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Concord, all of them have had their narrative of success torn down. And now I've just seen a new tactic all over my social media feed as this guy here essentially was trying to claim that Ghost of Yotei has sold many millions of copies already. But what is really funny is how the dude's own numbers backfired spectacularly thanks to Hypnotic over on X digging into those numbers and flipping it around to suggest once again that Yotei is not selling very well.
Kicking my ass! Do you mind?
Alright, me hearties, make sure that you hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, then what are you waiting for? We have gotten a ton of new subscribers lately, so it is time to ask the mandatory question.
How many assholes we got on this ship anyhow?
Yo!
we are now sitting at 164,000 a-holes in this space pirate crew, and as is the custom on this channel, with every 1,000 subscribers I add a new ship to the fleet in order to house the newcomers. This time, one of you guys selected the Wolfen from one of my all-time favorite video game series, Star Fox. If any of you have recommendations for future ships to be added to the fleet, drop them into the comment section and I will add them to my long list. Super chats get bumped to the top of that list, and also, for your reference, I will be adding an alphabetical list of all the ships already in the fleet into the description of this video. In any case though, thanks for being here everyone, it means a lot, and I will do my best to keep earning your viewership.
I knew it, I'm surrounded by assholes.
But alright guys, let's dig into what's going on with Ghost of Yotei here. The progressives out there and the corporate shills simply have no stomach for the idea that gamers could successfully boycott a game like Ghost of Yotei. I mean, on paper, this game should be a no-brainer success after all. Ghost of Tsushima was a new IP when it released, and it quickly became wildly popular. It was the same with Dragon Age the Veilguard. A sequel to Dragon Age Inquisition should have been huge, but it flopped, costing its studio lots of money. It was the same with Assassin's Creed Shadows. They finally took the Assassin's Creed franchise to olden days Japan, but it flopped, and it was because a large segment of gamers said no thanks to the woke messaging in it. Ghost of Yotei is the latest release in this same vein, and the corporate butt kissers really need a win, which is why we have people like Dodgy Kebab over here on X trying so hard to cultivate a narrative that makes Ghost of Yotei look successful. He wrote this in response to Hypnotic talking about Ghost of Yotei. He said,
"This is absolute cope. You can measure a PlayStation game's digital sales by how many have given it a rating. Around 2 to 0.5% of players rate a game. FC26 sold about 5 million digital copies and has 14,000 ratings. Ghost has 21,000 ratings. Try this same formula with any game which released."
And he includes a few pictures with his post. This one shows that FC26 has 14,000 ratings, and this pic shows that Ghost of Yotei has 21,000 ratings on the PlayStation Network. He also shows this image of a headline here showing that FC26 has sold 10 million copies, and then he highlights this point from the article which suggests that 60% of the 10 million copies of FC26 that were sold on PlayStation, meaning that they sold 6 million units on the PS5. So, what he is suggesting is that since Yotei has more ratings, then that must mean Yotei has sold more copies than FC26. And actually, if you use this logic, then Ghost of Yotei, which has 1.5 times the ratings of FC26, then this would lead you to believe that the game has sold 1.5 times the copies on PS5 of FC26. This analysis is basically suggesting that Yotei has sold somewhere in the ballpark of 9 million units, and that is only digital copies, mind you. You guys will have to excuse me for a second because I can't contain my laughter.
Oh wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
But now, let's look at some real analysis here from Hypnotic, where he breaks this down. I have to make one correction in his numbers though. He mentions that Ghost of Tsushima is known to have sold around 13 million copies, but that number also includes PC sales, which were around 1.5 million. But actually, all this does is weaken the previous guy's argument, so in the interest of giving them their best case scenario, we will go go along with what Hypnotic did here, he replied to this guy on X saying, "Thank you for the math you provided, let's use it. Ghost of Tsushima on PSN has 271,000 ratings, last known sales number is 13 million copies on PlayStation, both PS4 and PS5, 271,000 reviews of 13 million copies equals around 2.08%, which is slightly higher than your 2% if you take the reviews of 21,000 on the PlayStation Network using basic math. That brings us at your 2% scenario of 1,050,000 copies sold. Considering Ghost of Yotei did not start with 21,000 ratings, that means that after 6 days of release, it barely sold over 1 million copies. That is not the 24 hours, 1 million copy story you are all pushing just using your own math and comparisons. You can clearly see that people rate the Ghost games more often than the sports games, so using Tsushima as a baseline would make more sense at the 2% you provided. For comparison, Ghosts of Tsushima sold over 2.4 million copies in half the time, 3 days on PS4. I can't wait for the goalpost to move. Your math was good for the gotcha, but now that it's been used against you to prove Yotei is a flop compared to Tsushima, I wonder where you will go next. PS4 had a bigger base. It's totally not 2% like Tsushima, and it's less somehow with Yotei. And actually, just to interject here, I would be willing to bet that it's way more than 2% of the users that reviewed this game at the early stages of its release, because you have a lot of shills, like this dodgy kebab guy here, trying his damnedest to convince people that this is a good game. As I've said, these people need narrative control. The game journalists and shills have lost the narrative completely over the past year, which is why they're pushing so hard for a win here. That's why I've seen this article all over my timeline, insisting that the game is selling like crazy in Japan, but here is the basic truth. The game peaked at 111,000 viewers on its launch on Twitch, and now they're getting less than 13,000 not even a week later. And until Sony and Sucker Punch actually come out and announce some hard numbers, and it seems very telling that they haven't said anything yet. I mean, you gotta think, if Ghost of Yotei's review count represented 0.5% of the game's digital sales based on what the shill's analysis suggests, then this game would have sold over 4 million copies on digital alone, and that definitely would have been announced already by Sony and Sucker Punch. But until we hear something concrete, then the few scant clues that we have suggest that actually the game is not faring very well. In fact, if we were to use this guy's method of counting reviews on the PlayStation Network to determine digital sales, then the game has likely only sold around 1 million copies only recently. Maybe that is why Sucker Punch has been quiet so far. But I'm gonna leave it there. Drop your mockery of Ghost of Yotei shills and their poor coping skills into the comment section below, and we will talk there. Thanks for watching me, Hearties. If you haven't already, your Admiral is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.